Anthony helped carry through. I just cannot think of a better person to lead the Labor Party at this time. He's got the right values, he's got the commitment, he's got the strength, he's got the experience, and he'll fight. Welcome him and give him all the support you can. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Jenny McAllister, the National President of the Labor Party, and to Greg Combay. A great loss to the Labor caucus, but he remains an absolute Labor hero. To Greg Combay, thank you very much for doing me this great honour. My other parliamentary colleagues, Tanya Plibersek, Doug Cameron, Stephen Jones, to Nick Martin from the Assistant National Secretary. I noticed Premier Nathan Rees, former Premier Nathan Rees was here. To other MPs, officials of the great Australian trade union movement who are here as well. Welcome. Well, friends, this is a historic moment. This is the first time that we have seen an opening up of our processes to the rank and file of the party to determine what is the most significant decision that a political party can make, which is, of course, who leads it at the federal level. There are some who resisted this reform. You might have noticed. There are some who are still saying this will be a one-off. I say to them, come and tell this to the people here tonight. And just you try to wind back this reform. This reform that I acknowledge is the product of not this generation, but generations who've campaigned to open up the party, such as former Senator Bruce Childs, my predecessor in Grainledge, Jeanette McHugh, the only party officer who'd talked to me for a while, Chris Raper. This embracing of democracy is important, but it's absolutely necessary. We know that our party is ageing. We know that it's reduced its size in terms of participation. We know that unless organisations reform, people demand more participation than they used to. The bowling club that does the same thing that it used to do last year, last decade and the generation before, withers and closes. So too must political parties adapt. And they must adapt by giving people a real direct say in the way that the party is run. And that is why this process is so important, and that's why I welcome the fact that Bill Shorten also, who is a very good candidate and would make a very good leader of the Labor Party if he is successful. I will certainly honour this process, and I'm very pleased that it's taking place. This campaign is a difficult one. There are people in this room who I've known literally since I was at school, when I joined the Labor Party. And I said last Friday at the press conference after the caucus to which I announced my candidacy that any journalist was free to out any occasion in which, in any context, public or private, I'd suggested to them that I wanted to lead the Labor Party. It is not the case. I have always seen myself as a team player making a contribution to the team. However, after the election, and towards the end I refused to discuss it until the election was over last Saturday, I had a decision to make on the basis that a number of people, both within the caucus, within the party, from the business community and from the wider community, were suggesting that I should run for the leadership of the Federal Parliamentary Labor Party. And I'm running because I believe that I am the best person to lead Labor back into government in one term. I regard my personal story as a Labor story. I grew up not far from here in council housing with a single mum who was on a disability support pension. Labor made a difference to my life. I understood that when Labor was in government, pensions went up. When the Conservatives came in, pensions stalled. I understood that the first political campaign I got involved with was when the Civic Reform, the Liberal Front group, got control of the Sydney City Council and they tried to sell my house. They tried to privatise public housing in the inner city. And we organised a rent strike. And it was the first engagement that I had in a political campaign, involved in the community and involved with the support of Labor councillors such as Robert Tickner and Phil Rhodes and a bunch of other progressives on the City Council. We won that fight. I then went on to be able to be the first person in my family to complete high school, let alone university, but had access to university. I had a mum who wanted me to have every opportunity in life. And that's what Labor is about. Making the next generation have more opportunities than those who come before it, making a sustainable environment that doesn't pass on costs of carbon pollution and other excesses onto the next generation. We're about moving forward as a society, as individuals, but also as a community, because we understand, indeed, that the sum is much greater than just the individuals. So no one gave me a leg up in life. I did my best, but I also learnt that from time to time you've got to have a go. You've got to have a go. And I'm up for this job. I'm standing on the themes of vision, unity and strength. I am up to a hard job. During the 17 years I've been in Parliament, both in opposition and in government, I've held a range of portfolios. At the end of, still now actually, because the new government, the rush seems to have slowed down a little bit. Remember the budget crisis and all that? That seems to have stalled. I speak to you tonight as still the Deputy Prime Minister. Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, the Minister for Broadband Communications and the Digital Economy, the Leader of the House of Representatives and the Member for Greenlow. I think I'm up to the title of Leader of the Opposition. And over those 6 years, in terms of my record, I won't claim too much credit for the National Broadband Network. That was Stephen Conroy's work for a long period of time, and he did a great job with it. But in infrastructure, I doubled the roads budget. I rebuilt 1/3 of the interstate rail freight network. I invested more in urban public transport than every single transport minister from Federation through to 2007 combined. I reduced the number of transport regulators down from 23 down to 3. I introduced a national aviation policy white paper with a coherent 20-year plan for aviation in this country. I introduced more legislation when it came to the maritime sector than all previous governments combined, including a complete rewriting, and the hint is in the title, the Navigation Act 1912, that had sat there for 100 years. And I rewrote it and introduced national shipping reform so that Aussie flags will be on the back of Aussie ships carrying Aussie goods to the world. I introduced safe rates for truck drivers, a campaign that the TWU had been engaged in for 20 years. As Regional Development Minister and Local Government Minister, I presided over more than 5,000 community infrastructure projects, including projects in every single local government area in the country. I established the Australian Council of Local Government for the first time, having a direct connection with local mayors, with the Cabinet, meeting every year, doing it in a participative way. And the overall framework, I established Infrastructure Australia, a model for how government can work with the private sector to deliver infrastructure investment, to get that advice, not to make a decision and then get input, to get that input on the ground level so that you have proper cost-benefit analysis for where taxpayers' funds should be used. So I think in terms of my record, if I was to be leader, it would be difficult for an opposition to challenge it, given during the last term of government it wasn't until the second last day of Parliament that I had a single question in the House of Representatives from the person who will be sworn in tomorrow to take over most of that portfolio. But importantly, I think during that period as well, I showed that I could unite the party. I'm someone who, when I stood for Deputy Leader of the party, received the support of Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard and Wayne Swan and Penny Wong and Stephen Conroy and Craig Emerson and Greg Combay and Tanya Plibersek and Jenny Macklin and a host of the other senior members of the government. Now, that wasn't a uniting time, you might have noticed. But in terms of my capacity to work with people in an open way, in a transparent way, what I'll be saying to you and to rank and file members around the country is what you see is what you get. And that is what I believe we need in terms of the leadership of the Labor Party. In terms of vision, I have a 4-point plan in terms of themes that go through, and I remember all 4 of them. I thought of having 6, but that can go very wrong. The first is, of course, that the government and particularly a Labor government must always prioritise the economy and jobs. We must prioritise that. The former government did, and we have a proud record in seeing Australia through the global financial crisis. In terms of that, we should also consider that it's not just any jobs. It's about people's working conditions as well. And we need a Labor opposition that will defend working conditions, that won't backslide when they try to introduce forms of work choices by a different name. We need also one that will identify not just the protection of jobs, because economies do change and we are presented with challenges in terms of what's occurring in China and the region, but we also need to identify new innovative industries. We need to identify, for example, how the national broadband network and use of smart technology will create jobs of the future. I mean, the internet, for every job that's been lost, has created two. We need to compete in our region on the basis of how smart we are, how clever we are, how innovative we are, not on the basis of our wages and conditions in this region. And that is the basis of a program going forward. The second theme, of course, is opportunity. We must always look at how we look after people and provide them for opportunity regardless of how humble their beginnings. So that means the sort of initiatives that we had in childcare and out-of-school hours care during the election campaign. It means looking at the Better Schools plan, making sure that we hold them to account when they said there was no real difference, even though they were only providing 1/3 of the funding. We need to hold them to account on that. We need to look at tertiary education as a whole, not just at universities, but skills and trades and training. How do we get the jobs of the future? There's models, including in the maritime sector. I set up a Maritime Workforce Development Forum, of which Paddy Crumlin was on it. But industry was on it as well. The universities, including the Maritime College down at Launceston, and they came up with a plan for very little cost to government that can actually produce a workforce going through for the jobs of the future. And I think that is absolutely critical. An essential element of a modern Labor agenda is sustainability. We need to make sure that we look after, not just in terms of the old way that sustainability is sometimes looked at, about the natural environment. That's a given. We need to do that. But we also need to look at the sustainability of our built environment and of our cities and planning. We need to engage in that debate about urban public transport. It is absurd that Tony Abbott is saying he wants to be the infrastructure Prime Minister, but there'll be no money for any rail projects. He's reducing the roads budget. He wants to trash the national broadband network, and there's no funding either being wound back for clean energy. That's not being an infrastructure Prime Minister. And we need to look at sustainability as a whole framework in everything that government does. And the final principle is, of course, a simple one that is at the heart of the Labor agenda of a fair go. What does that mean? It means a fair go isn't having one woman out of 19 in your cabinet. A fair go is regarding everyone, every human being with respect. It's recognising the diversity of our society and recognising that we're all enriched by it. It's recognising that we need to look after people and remove any form of discrimination, whether it be on the basis of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or indeed who people happen to love. So the way that I would see the coming period of opposition is that we need to defend our legacy. From 1996 to 1998, I think we didn't do that enough in terms of the Hawke and Keating reforms. We need to defend our economic, social and environmental gains. Under both Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, They were good governments that did major reform. And in terms of the circumstances of the last 3 years, the remarkable challenge of a hung parliament, quite extraordinary reforms got through. I think during that period I showed that I have a capacity. I had to deliver Bob Catter and Adam Bandt on the same platform. I think I've shown a capacity to be able to reach out to people. You know, that's before you got to Rob Oakeshott. Never a short conversation. But a very decent and honourable man, as was Tony Windsor. And that's part of what has to happen. I think there does have to be respect returned to the Parliament. It's extraordinary that for Tony Abbott to speak about this, having failed to respect what happened in terms of the outcome in 2010, each and every day trying to wreck the Parliament, is quite extraordinary. Respect, though, doesn't mean rolling over. Respect doesn't mean abandoning a Labor agenda. Respect means being prepared to put your argument. And I think when a group of people arrived in Marrickville with a coffin and a few hundred people demonstrating against action on climate change, along with the former member for Indi, I'll give them points for this. Standing in Marrickville Road with signs saying "Tolerance is our demise" is quite courageous, if somewhat confused. But I think there, on that day, when I showed, against Australian Federal Police advice, it must be said, that the policeman, I knew it was pretty tough, but when the policeman said, "I really don't think you should go back out there and talk to them," and I said, "Oh, it'll be right." He said, "Oh, it's a bit nasty out there, and I fought in Iraq and Afghanistan." I thought to myself, well, but I think I showed that day as well that under whatever the circumstances, I'm always prepared to put the progressive view, regardless of whether. And I think, to be fair, even to the organiser, sent me that demonstration sent me quite a nice letter, acknowledging that, a genuine letter saying he was surprised that I was prepared to do it. The other thing that opposition will do, though, is that we have an opportunity to come up with the next big idea. It's always Labor that does the big reforms, always Labor. You know, the introduction of the age pension, workers' compensation, the transcontinental railway, compulsory superannuation, Medicare, opening up university access, recognising China. It is always Labor that does the big reforms, and we've done some that history will regard very well over the last 6 years, such as the National Broadband Network, such as the Better Schools Plan, such as Disability Care Australia, such as putting a price on carbon. All of those reforms are worthy of defence, but there'll be new reforms for a new modern agenda for the next Labor government. The great thing about this process of opening up the party is that it will engage you here, but hopefully not hundreds, but thousands like you, who will join the Labor Party, who will go from being supporters to being participants. And we need to take the spirit of the election of the leader and broaden it out, involve rank and file members in participation, recognise that we benefit from opening ourselves up and getting greater participation, that new ideas come all the time. One of the things that I've learnt, and one of the reasons why I'm running for leader, is that there is not a day in Parliament where I have not learnt anything. And I don't mean that in terms of sitting in the Parliament. Often you learn a hell of a lot more sitting in Marrickville or walking down Marrickville Road or getting out, engaging in a campaign like that, talking to people. They come up with good ideas. You learn something new every day. I've learnt a lot over the last 17 years. I was the manager of opposition business in charge of strategy in the lead up to the 2007 election. If we win the same number of seats that we won in 2007 or that Kim Beazley won in 1998, we will be back in government next term. Yeah. So I welcome this process. I think it's good that people will have a difficult choice, and whether you vote for me or vote for Bill Shorten, the important thing is that you vote, and it's important that your branch members vote and that you contact people in your branches and encourage them to vote regardless of what way they're going to vote. Bill Shorten's a very good candidate. He's a great communicator. He's someone who I believe would be a very good Labor leader. I'm putting myself forward though because I think at this time I've got the vision, I can bring unity to the party, and I've got the strength that's required to take on Tony Abbott and bring him down in one term. Yeah. Thank you.
And that's where we leave Anthony Albanese's campaign launch in Sydney at Trades Hall. You can continue watching this. There should be questions from the members there to Mr Albanese. You can continue watching on Australia's Public Affairs channel, APAC. That's channel 648.